You know, they used to say Indira Gandhi was the Iron Lady of Indian politics. And you were called both charming and probably the most charismatic chief minister this city-state has ever seen. You went through many trials, tribulations, crises. What is it that allowed you to keep smiling through all of this?
When you enjoy what you're doing, you enjoy the challenges. I think that's what keeps you smiling. And with it, if you find that the changes that you're trying to bring around are actually happening, that's the secret of everybody's smile. And it is my secret also. When you were chief minister, this city went through a complete transformation. Many changes took place in the physical infrastructure, and interestingly, some also in the governance infrastructure. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences? What you think you have achieved becomes outdated or inadequate or inefficient within a couple of years. So there's a constant challenge to carry on innovating, giving new things to Delhi, whether it is transport or it's education. We have to go to the central government for practically everything. We brought on the metro under very difficult circumstances. We got in touch with the government of India, and at that time there was the Atal Bihari government, Vajpayee government. And I must say that the way Mr. L.K. Advani and Mr. Vajpayee encouraged us, because it was good for the country, it was good for the nation, it was good for Delhi. So when you have the will and you have the commitment, and above all you have an attachment to what you're doing, I think nothing is impossible.
But I think what we're really looking at with this session is what will really bring everyone into India's growth story. That's the problem, and that's the thing that we need to tackle. And Mr. Modi, can I start first with you? How do you combine what's already been started in Bihar into the sort of jobs and entrepreneurial activity which is needed?
The most important thing is governance. BJP, along with Nitish Kumar, we tried to put Bihar on the track of governance. And the topmost priority was given to law and order, and then the roads. And during my period, in the 7 years period, we tried to change the image of Bihar.
Rajiv, that leads rather neatly onto a question I was going to ask later, but let me ask it now. From your experience in government and from working for the CII and for FICCI, do you think that enough is now being done to drive decisions and to drive implementation?
All due respect to Modi Saab and to the other Modi Saab, it is true that good governance is the necessary condition for growth and development in this country. But as we economists like to say, it's not probably a sufficient condition. In India, today, agriculture cannot be fixed by just good governance. You need some huge structural, conceptual changes in agriculture for Punjab to stop growing paddy and for Maharashtra to stop growing sugarcane and for Bihar to become the rice bowl of the country. Now, this cannot be done by good governance alone. Competitive good governance is better than competitive populism, which is what we are moving towards. And that's the best thing that is happening from 2014 or even earlier. That today the chief ministers in this country and the successive governments will fight elections on the basis of showing results on the basis of good competitive governance and not populism. And so therefore you are moving towards from entitlements to empowerment.
Do you think, Judge, that if he really gets them spread through the country, financial inclusion, digital and all the rest, that he has achieved he will have achieved what he was elected to do?
If we have a white sheet of paper and we say, here is a plan to generate jobs, in today's technological context, it's getting very perplexing to find out what will lead to jobs. The job intensity of capital investment is reducing day by day. And therefore, coming back to the key point, the outcome of will I get jobs is a question that not just India has to answer, it is a global question.
The big debate today, in the opinion of this House, affirmative action must be an economic right, not a birthright. That is the subject that we're debating this afternoon. And I'm going to invite for the motion Surjit Bhalla to speak first.
First of all, how many countries in the world do you think use the birthright system of affirmative action? It turns out there are none, except us, of course. Second, the Constitution says that there are human rights, there are individual rights, and the state shall not discriminate on the basis of age, sex, whatever, etc., etc., etc. At the end of it, it says, nothing that has been said above shall prevent the state from imposing, if you will, the system of birthrights. Even in the last clause, it does not say that it shall discriminate on the basis of caste. It says it shall discriminate on the basis of economic circumstance. According to the birthright principle, there was, if you will, 60%. Once the OBCs were included in the birthright, the OBCs as scheduled castes and scheduled tribes together account for 60% of the population. We should also note that of the remaining 40%, 20% are women. So that brings us to 80%. Okay? So 80% will have reservations according to the birthright principles. Then you're left basically with the following, that other than upper caste Hindus and Sikhs and Parsis and Jains and, if you will, 3/4 of the Christian population, everybody in the country must have a birthright, which is what my opponents will try and convince you. Once you agree with the principle that everybody has a birthright, and I love to hear why everybody doesn't have a birthright, you come up with a 100% reservation system, which means no reservations based on a birthright. Thank you.
I'd like to call on Mr. Manishankar Iyer to begin the debate on the other side against the motion.
Affirmative action is about social inclusion, and economic rights is about economic inclusion. For those sections of society, such as the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes, we said there will be affirmative action incorporated in the Constitution. So the Constitution itself, despite wishing to treat all Indians equally, recognizes that by birth there is a large segment of our population that these people required special action in their favor. So therefore, for the socially and educationally backward classes, there was another set of affirmative action that was taken. And the consequence of these two has been to ensure that personal dignity and social status, which had been denied to the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes, and opportunities for education, as well as to ensure that somebody who carries the name of Yadav, which is connected with the cowherd profession, can indeed become the chief minister of a state and remain that for all these years, as we've seen in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. That was meant for social inclusion and political inclusion, whereas our growth model in Nehru's day was designed to make it economically inclusive. To ensure inclusion, we started legislative processes that brought in a right. These are meant for all, but to the extent that there are certain exclusions, it's based upon economic principles. Therefore, it is completely wrong to suggest that affirmative action has had its day or that its basis should be changed.
I invite Shazia to come and speak next.
My worthy opponent, Manishankar Iyer, and somebody I admire greatly, made a brilliant point and indulged in what he does best, semantics. He really veered away from the main point and actually disproved himself. He started talking about social inclusion and then started talking about economy and talked about the poor and the rich. And the gap has not changed despite the Mandal Commission that has happened. If you see the reservations in each of the states, you will realize that while certain OBCs amongst the OBCs and even in scheduled castes, because we live in a country of degradation, which means that even amongst the OBCs and Dalits, there are subcastes and sects. The real beneficiaries that should have been of this inclusion have remained away from it. And the poorest in this country are really the Neo-Buddhists and the Muslims. And how many Muslims get reservations? Because of the caste-based reservations, less than 1% of Pasemanda Muslimans, who incidentally are ousted and wrestled out by the other OBCs. So the entire argument that there should be more equity, economic and social, is actually dampened and taken away because of the system. There is a case to be made here, and we must review it and be honest about it. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Dr. Qureshi to come up and speak next.
The whole problem starts with the accident of birth. Some people are born in those families where they're looked down upon for millions of years. The way they're treated, their women are raped, their houses are burned. If they draw water from a well, see what happens. So in such a situation, to say that they should not be dealt with more affirmatively on the basis of birth, I think it's absolutely wrong. Secondly, there is no contradiction between the two. These people socially backward are also the economically most backward also. In their case, it is double jeopardy. Now, when we are talking of reservation on this ground or that ground, the basic issue is getting missed. The integrated approach and integrated thinking which was required, nobody is talking about. And finally, I have full sympathy with the two charming ladies on the other side, because if they win this debate, they're going to lose their job in their parties. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Qureshi, and I invite Shaina.
Well, at the outset, let me say that India's experiment with affirmative action is the world's oldest. We all know this. The reservation policy is an elaborate quota system for public jobs, places in publicly funded colleges like the IIT and most elected assemblies. Rather than debate about whether the practice helps, politicians focus on extending them to the new blocks of voters. By the late 1980s, after a commission of inquiry, lowly but non-scheduled Hindu castes, collectively known as OBCs or the other backward class, some 27% of the population also got quotas. I only want to conclude by saying few things. When Dr. Ambedkar actually talked about a reservation, he never talked about a perpetual reservation. The entire talk was have the courage to take a popular political decision, but within 10 years, reconsider, review. For those of you who feel that the positive part of the reservation is the Panchayati Raj, I stand to believe that women's reservation is also a positive part.
And our last speaker is Jyoti Malhotra. Jyoti.
A caste census has been held in our country not so long ago. But why do you think the government of India is not releasing the data of that census? Because it would surprise all the upper castes and completely, I think, rejig political equations in our country when they see that lower castes are actually in much, much larger numbers than we think. In 2007, when former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh asked the industrial community, in Indian industry, to take people from the lower castes into and give them jobs, and private industry said no. And I wonder why that was. Is it because they were not well educated? Is it because they were not well trained? Or is it because they were Dalits and people of lower castes? Perhaps the first two arguments also hold some water. But why is it that you did not feel a responsibility to your own country, to your own people who you give jobs to otherwise, and offer to train these people, to train people of the lower caste, and especially the Dalits?
I'm going to invite the team leaders on both sides for a rebuttal. So Sujit Bhalla gets to go first.
On my left are the do-gooder liberals. They want to do good. And if you will, closer to me, so let's say on the right, are the pragmatists. They want to actually help the people this whole system was meant to do. So let us look at their interests. And as I mentioned in my earlier comments, there were about 27% of the people who was supposed to obtain birthright in jobs, in education, everything else. That system has gone up to 60%, and I'd like to see on what basis, and I argued that it actually goes up to 80% if you want to include the women, which I'm sure the do-gooder liberals want to include. So let us know, how do we get and serve the needs, birthright needs, of 80% of the people? If you want to get a glimpse of what that might be, and the great economic system that the do-gooders offered, which was what the Congress has done for the last 50, 60 years, look at take an ad in the UP, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, that for a peon's job in the UP administration, there were 4 lakh applicants, which included PhDs, etc. So therefore, the great the birthright system that they've offered has for 10 jobs for a peon in the public sector, which obviously pays very well because they really want to help the poor, and they make sure that by wanting to help the poor, they help everybody else but the poor. That is what pragmatists like me and my side has to offer.
Thanks, Mr. Bhalla. Mr. Iyer.
There are 2 sets of arguments that we've heard from there. Some intelligent comments from the ladies and other comments from the gentlemen. I'll take up the ladies first. The basic argument made by the ladies was that there's something wrong with the system of reservations under affirmative action. I agree. There's no reason at all why the system of affirmative action should not undergo change. But please don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. One of the first changes I want to see done is that Christian Dalits should be included in the reservations for the scheduled castes. But I can't ask for Muslim Dalits to be included because the Muslim community says that they don't have Dalits. But in the Christian community, they've been saying so, and I think it's shameful that we haven't included that. As far as the backward classes is concerned, the OBCs, I would underline that the letter C stands for classes and not for castes. But ever since the Mandal report, the result was that the accent has entirely been on castes. I see no reason at all why Muslims who are at least educationally backward should not be included in the OBCs. You need affirmative action to deal with millennial social problems. But if we can have a model of economic growth that is more equitable than the present one is, then we may be able to address the economic problems.
So we're coming to the fun part now, which is for you all to decide which side you think has won this debate. So let's just, have people raise their hands. If you think that the side for the motion has won this debate, please raise your hands. That's a lot of people. And how many of you think that the side against the motion has won the debate? I think Surjit Bhalla and his team has won this debate today. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us. Thank you.
I now invite Mr. Anand Sharma, Deputy Leader of Opposition Rajya Sabha, to give the valedictory address.
My idea of India, in which I was born, 6 years after India's independence, is of a India which has old languages, religions, people of different ethnic origins, living together in respect, in acceptance, despite the traumatic history. Therefore, it becomes our duty to ensure that we secure, we protect, we nurture what we were bequeathed. I have no doubt in my mind that we as a country have enormous potential to grow and to be a global leader. Nothing is insurmountable if we correctly recognize our priorities and also respect this idea of India that we all have to live together. We need to work. This is our country, and let's not allow a situation where anything else comes in the way. Therefore, it's important for us to keep what we inherited, as I put my observations or statement to rest. Let's protect it, let's nurture it in the interest of this great country. Thank you.
Now I would like to invite Mr. Jayant Sinha, Minister of State, Ministry of Finance, for a special address at the conclusion of the 10th edition of the Mindmine Summit.
Our idea of India, based and founded on the Constitution, to take India forward is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. And as we look at it, our view is that there are 4 major groups that we need to pay particular attention to. Number 1, Garib, the poor. It is the farmers, who are the backbone of India. It is the youth. And number 4, the middle class. If you include these 4 groups together, you pretty much cover 80-90% of India. The wind is on our backs, and I'm sure we will certainly have Achhe din for everyone. Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to invite Mr. Sunil Kanmunjal to kindly conclude the event with his summary and present the vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an eventful 2 days. We had 14 sessions, 57 leaders as panelists and speakers. The subjects have ranged across a pretty wide canvas while focusing on the one big theme. So I think we are at a unique point in history where we are seeing the setting up of some amazing long-term building blocks. Can we carry all of our people along to get full benefit of what we believe will be a big, massive transformation this nation is likely to see over the next few decades? And as India moves into a bigger leadership position, can we also be a responsible leader for our neighborhood and for the rest of the world? So some of these questions, hopefully, will get addressed in the future Mindmine Summits. But thank you, both of you, for an outstanding address. Each of you touched a different aspect of India, India's parliament, India's constitution, and India's very being. Thank you very much, and thank you all of you for being here with us and being an important part of this assignment. Thank you.